over at BangTheBook.com. We are your one-stop shop for sports betting news and information. Phenomenal work being done by our cast of writers over there. Make sure you check out what we have to offer across the NHL, college basketball, NBA, soccer, tennis, golf, NASCAR, UFC, you name it, we've got it covered over at BangTheBook.com. And, of course, as we go throughout the week here, I'll be doing some more Major League Baseball stuff, some more college basketball conference tournament stuff. A lot of good things going on over at BangTheBook.com in the very near future, so make sure that you check that out. Finally, as you know, this and every edition of Bang the Book Radio presented by our friends over at DSI Sportsbook. BTB200 is that promo code. 100% deposit match bonus for the Sportsbook. 100% deposit match bonus for the live casino at BetDSI. It's only a game until you bet it. Two guests on the program here today. We start things off with Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. Brian, how's it going today, man?
Hey, Adam. Welcome back, bud. How's it going?
That's going well, buddy. Appreciate it. Let's go ahead and start in the NHL. Obviously, yesterday, a very, very busy day, particularly for the Vegas Golden Knights, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But as far as trade deadlines, Brian, what do you think about this one overall?
It's a typical trade deadline. I mean, yesterday morning, you're up early and you're waiting, and it's quiet, and then it kind of explodes, you know. There were a lot more player-for-player deals, and I think the power teams in the West all addressed needs and got better. And but the big story of the trade deadline is Columbus saying, we're going for this, when there's no guarantee to make the playoffs. Now, they have no excuse now, but keeping Panarin and Bobrovsky, but then going basically getting Duchesne and Zingo and McQuaid. I mean, they added a lot of guys. They better do something. It's your backyard, man. They better do something in the playoffs this year because they got nothing, little in the pipeline and no picks down the road. Well, you tell me. I mean, it's your backyard. I wonder what the message is for the fans. I mean, that's got to say, hey, it's cool they're going for it, but I mean, you always have to weigh the short-term reward for the long-term risk.
Well, I mean, this is one of those situations where for Columbus, I don't know. I think you have to go for it. I mean, you're not finding a goaltender like Sergei Bobrovsky in free agency all that often. If you do, it's a guy where you're going to have to pay for some years at the back end of that contract that won't be very good. Panarin's probably the most skilled guy they've had since Rick Nash in his prime. I mean, they haven't won a playoff series in franchise history. You have to go for it one of these years. I think they made the right decision to do it here. I know they mortgaged the future. I know they don't have picks. I know the system is weak. I mean, their AHL team is right here in Cleveland. So, I know what they have to work with that roster, and there's really not a whole lot of NHL potential with that group. So, I mean, they made a conscious decision, and I think that when you've got a goaltender like Bobrovsky, if you can make your way into the playoffs, you're a live dog if you're an underdog. You're a good favorite with a goaltender like that. I think they made the right call personally.
No, I don't know what the right answer is. I mean, it'll all be weighed out by what will the results be. But as it's constituted today, they got a 1-point lead. They're in the playoffs by a point. And they're 2 away from being out. Again, with the additions, they're 7-3 in their last 10. You got to say, hey, look, I mean, they were a team I identified as one that would be on the banana peel with the distractions of Panarin and Bobrovsky. And sure enough, they plummeted down to where they're in a perilous position, but then they turn around and go for it. The one thing would be, you sit there and say, if I'm going to do all this stuff, do I honestly think you can win the whole thing? And I give them full marks for going for it, but, it's fun today, Adam, but, talk to me in June.
No, I completely understand. I mean, again, you're talking about a franchise that has never won a playoff series, and that was, again, I keep harping back on this point. They're a goalpost away from being up 3-0 on Washington last year, and probably winning that series. At least you would certainly think so. And maybe things are different here, but I think that they kind of dwell on that a little bit themselves as well. And look, I'm an analytics guy across most of the sports. I'm a believer in sample size, a believer in building for the long term. But also, I do wish there were more teams that got proactive and said, you know what, F it, we're going for it. And it's kind of a breath of fresh air. And maybe it blows up in their faces. Maybe it doesn't work for them at all. Maybe they do miss the playoffs. But like you said, I mean, at least there's that. They're going for it, and they sent a loud and clear message to that locker room. Now it's up to those guys to perform.
No, there's no doubt about it. Hey, Vegas did it last year. They kept Neal and Perron, let them walk for nothing, but they made it all the way to Game 5 of the finals. So can you get a lot out of it by going for it? Absolutely you can. And then in the West, I mean, they're just lining up to kill each other. It's crazy. I mean, San Jose's all in. There's no doubt about that from day one. If they can get Erik Karlsson healthy, the Jets get Kevin Hayes. Don't sleep on Nashville. What Poyle did, he gets Simmons and Granlund, and he's got a terrific defensive core, a great top line. And if they get good goaltending from Rinne, they're going to be really salty. The Flames have been a great story. And then Vegas goes off the 10-meter platform into the deep end of the pool and walks away with the by a country mile, the guy that was considered to be the best player. And the team was able to pull it off as a sign and trade. And at the end of the day, Erik Brannstrom's a wonderful prospect. And Ottawa's going to be, I think, thrilled to have this kid. But Vegas makes the big splash, and they were the team with potential that needed a kick in the pants and a wake-up call more than anybody. And that's the kind of player Stone is.
So here's the question then. As you mentioned, a lot of Western Conference teams making additions, the top 5, really positioning themselves well here, I think, for that playoff push. Columbus, obviously, some turnover there for them. They've been playing Duchesne on the top line here at first. They've kind of sat Pierre-Luc Dubois, maybe hoping he picks up a second win here late in the year. How do you approach these teams after they make these additions? I mean, obviously Columbus, a team that, as we talked about already, going for it. How do you view them in the short term? How do you view Vegas with a big splash like a Mark Stone? How do you view Nashville, a team at the core has been together 2 or 3 years? They're now in the Music City, but they're adding pieces that have to acclimate to the lineup. How do you handle this from a betting standpoint, Brian?
It's a great question, and I don't know that there's any great answer. Some of these guys are just that good that it's an instant upgrade. Some guys will get the 10-day bump from being moved and go bonkers, and then water will find its level. But then there's also the dynamic that you're, 65 games into a season, and a new guy's here. And, the whole point of this is, get results, but you're also trying to develop chemistry. So there are gray areas, Adam. There's nothing that just, they're automatically better. They got that guy. On paper they are. But there's still a transition stage for some of these guys and some of these teams.
Now, obviously, the other side of the coin here at the trade deadline, we always focus on the buyers. Let's focus on the sellers here. The Senators, obviously a huge seller. Duchesne, Stone, Zingle. You've got the Rangers were a big seller as well, trading Matt Zuccarello. And, we saw Henrik Lundqvist's interview after that and how emotional he was. Very tough time for these people who were sellers. So what do you do with them? I mean, do you think they've run in the towel? Do they rally around some of the young players that have an increased role now? What do you think about some of the major sellers here from the side?
The sellers are so dangerous now, Adam, it's not even funny. The teams that are out of it, they're going to have a lot of bad nights, but they're going to have nights where they're out there playing, having fun, and going for it. Guys are playing for jobs. Like Ottawa, they get the prospect Erik Brannstrom. And McPhee would not bring him to Vegas. And this kid, he's a phenomenal player with tons of offensive upside. I think Ottawa's going to circle the wagons on some of these games. Some of these teams, once they're out of it, the pressure's off them, and the other teams are vying for desperately to get a point or to get 2 points. And you stub your toe against an Ottawa or Detroit, at the end of the year, that could be the difference between making the playoffs or missing the playoffs. So the pressure actually is on the teams that are in the hunt. And from a betting perspective, they'll need teams winning as plus $2 dogs. I'll tell you that.
One more team I'm going to touch on here in general, and then we'll take a look at tonight's card and see if there's anything you like. The Dallas Stars. They go out, make a play for Matt Zuccarello, trying to enhance their offense a little bit, and they only have scored 157 goals this year, the third lowest in the Western Conference. They're kind of on the, they're certainly in the playoff race right now, but you kind of wonder how long that's sustainable if they're just not scoring goals. Then Zuccarello breaks his arm, and he's out for several weeks, may not even play here the rest of the regular season. How do you handle a team like that feels like they're getting some help, and all of a sudden the rug's pulled out from under them?
Yeah, I think Zuccarello's a really nice player. It was a nice fit for them, and I don't know that was enough to put him over the top. Then the guy comes in, plays a game, breaks his arm. On top of that, they're playing in Vegas tonight, and now Ben is hurt. I don't know that I trusted Dallas to begin with. I think it may be tough sledding for them the rest of the way. I think the Avs hit the skids. I can see maybe the Avs making a little bit of a push again. The good news for Dallas is, who are you really scared of? Colorado, Arizona, I guess Vancouver and Chicago, they're in the hunt. I think Chicago expended so much energy to get back in it that maybe they'll flatten out. So Dallas has a legitimate shot. Let's say there are 4 teams, realistically. Maybe I'm discounting Vancouver, but let's say Dallas, Minnesota, Colorado, and even Arizona. 4 teams are vying for 2 spots. Well, Dallas still has a pretty decent chance of getting in. Scares me in any way, shape, or form.
All right, so as we look at tonight's card, we've got a surging Carolina team laying $2.50. We've got Washington laying $3.50 tonight against Ottawa, and we just talked about Ottawa as a team that, pretty much lost everything that they had in terms of proven offensive upside with their forward group. Vegas, a $2 favorite tonight over Dallas. So some big numbers out there on the board, but also some games of significant interest tonight. Calgary and the Islanders, basically a coin flip game. You've got Columbus hosting Pittsburgh tonight. They're a minus 150 favorite in a really interesting spot. Then also San Jose and Boston, with some Boston money coming in here against the Sharks, who are on a pretty interesting road trip. Anything stand out to you about tonight's NHL card, Brian?
2 games I looked at, Adam. I think Calgary and the Islanders, it's an out-of-conference game. We know the Islanders can clog the neutral zone, and they're getting really good goaltending. Tendency at home is to try to do a little bit more. And Calgary likes to play an up-tempo game. I think that could be a fun game tonight. Again, it's an out-of-conference game. You get total 6. I can see goals in that game. The one I'll throw at you, and the season's likely over, but this would be the absolute last gas effort to circle the wagons. They're playing back-to-back nights. I like the Sabres tonight in Philadelphia. They're plus $1.45. They made a really nice trade. They got Brendan Montour from Anaheim, and he made it to Toronto last night but didn't play, so he'll make his debut tonight. So they've got now Montour and Dahlin for the next decade. But they've squandered and frittered away this season. But Philly, Wayne Simmons is out of there. It's the first game for them without, one of their leaders, and you're getting this plus price because of the back-to-back nights. Well, last night in Toronto, honestly, Buffalo was the better team for 55 minutes of that game. They gave up 3 goals in 2 minutes and 20 seconds, pulled the goalie. Omar came in, and they were right there. They ended up losing 5-3, but they had a chance to tie the game in the last second, and Toronto got the empty netter. But they played really hard last night, and you're back-to-back nights. It's a nothing trip from Toronto to Philly. Montour makes his debut. I like the Sabres tonight.
Well, of course, for Philadelphia here, Carter Hart's still on the shelf as well, so they're missing their best. Interesting note that Buffalo and Toronto play each other again on Saturday night. So I'll be curious to see how that price is adjusted. Toronto wins 5-3. Looks like they had a pretty good game there as a minus 230, minus 240 favorite. What does that price look like on Saturday? That'll be something that you want to keep an eye out for over the weekend. Oh, and let's transition. Go ahead.
Real quick, just to wrap up the Buffalo-Philly game, it's all about Buffalo. I think there's a lot of things pointing to Buffalo. It's the thing that Simmons is not playing. The other thing I would throw at you, and I guess you can make the same case for Pittsburgh, although I think Pittsburgh's mad playing Columbus tonight. But Columbus will have a bounce in their step with all the new acquisitions. But I think it's a letdown spot for Philly, too. as they had this remarkable comeback, scored 2 goals with the goalie pulled and won in overtime in the outdoor game in front of 70,000 fans. Now, I think it's a huge letdown spot for Philly, too.
That's a very good angle. Definitely something you want to consider, from an NHL standpoint here tonight. All right, let's talk for a couple of minutes, Brian. And as far as I know, nobody's posted odds yet for this race. If I'm wrong, you could certainly correct me there, because I do know that this race is out there in Las Vegas. In fact, I am seeing odds over at 5 dimes. So Kevin Harvick, Kevin Harvick, about a 5-1 favorite here in this one. Kyle Busch plus 550. Truex, Larson, Keselowski in the plus 660, 7-1 range. Logano about 9-1 there for this race in Vegas this weekend. We'll have my preview up over at BangTheBook.com here this afternoon. I imagine Brian will do a video for us on our Bang the Book YouTube page as well. But a lot of talk of this new rules package, Brian, and some uncertainty that comes along with that. Why don't you fill us in on that?
Well, they had a modified set of new rules last week in Atlanta, but the aerodynamics package actually kicks in this week in Vegas. It brings the horsepower down. I'm no motorhead. It brings the horsepower down from 750 to 550, and the premise is it's going to make for more pack racing. Vegas, in the 1.5 mile tracks, a lot of times, it's like a parade through town. But one thing that happens is, and likely still will happen, is the car that gets the lead will be able to pull away, and then there'll be a lot more bunched racing in the back of the pack. So it's going to come down to restarts, track position, pit stops, as it always does. That being said, a lot of these teams tested in Vegas before the Atlanta race, and the guys that tested well in Vegas, the Penske team tested really well. Ryan Blaney, I had Ryan Blaney last week, and basically he had the race won. That's a NASCAR race, and these things happen. He comes in the pit, and 2 guys that weren't even involved in the race had an accident right in front of him in the pit while he's in the pit. It cost him the race. So I think Blaney comes right back with an opportunity. Jimmy Johnson's done well in Vegas at a balloon price of 40-1. The one thing I would say to you, Harvick, the same cast of characters, right? Harvick, Busch, Truex, Larson, Keselowski are the favorites. But this is the first race with this aerodynamic package. I always say Daytona, Talladega with the restrictor plate racing and the big accident. Those are the races where a big price can win. Harvick's going to win in Phoenix, right? But I would say that there are gray areas with this new aerodynamic package this week that, one of the big boys or a couple of the big boys could struggle with this, and somebody from in the 20-1 range could be markedly better. So I would think there would be an opportunity now, before anybody knows anything about this aerodynamics package, to take a shot with a mid-range price play. So I'd be looking at guys like Blaney, Amarillo, and Johnson at double-digit numbers.
Well, and that's the thing about NASCAR. I mean, obviously, they're working this constant struggle to keep fan engagement, and, obviously the Xfinity Series doesn't really do a whole lot for them. And, of course, over the last 2 years, they've been capping how many Cup Series guys can be in those. They've been capping the number of Cup Series participations allowed throughout the year. And, you look at the last couple of years in NASCAR, and it's been so top-heavy, so dominated by the Joe Gibbs team or Harvick and the Penske team, or Stewart-Haas Racing. It's been a certain number of teams that are winning the vast majority of these races. So do you feel like this year we do get more of a spread with, we won't see a guy win 6 or 7 races this year like we have seen in recent years?
I know that would like to be their goal, but probably not. The reality of it is they're all great drivers. It's who's got the fastest car that week. Well, what happens? You get Hendrick Motorsports or the Hendrick engines. The teams with a boatload of dough can afford the best engines on any given week. It's almost like March Madness. Say, well, how many teams can cut down the nets? Well, you're probably looking at 10 to a dozen. That's kind of like NASCAR. I mean, how many true contenders are there on the majority of NASCAR races? Probably 10 to a dozen. And the rest of them are just going around in circles out there.
Well, like I said, I'll have a preview up for the Pennzoil 400 here today, and then also the Boyd Gaming 300 is the Xfinity Series race this week. So I'll have those two previews up over at BangTheBook.com. And like I said, look for Brian's video for the Pennzoil 400 over on our Bang the Book YouTube page. So, Brian, one more item of business here on what's become, like I said, you're kind of a jack of all trades for us here, kind of a grab bag segment, betting the board segments on Tuesday mornings. The Honda Classic down at PGA National. The Florida swing gets underway, 4 straight Florida events, and quite frankly, this is not a very good field here at all. So I had a very hard time handicapping this tournament. How about you?
Well, what I would say to you is I think this week could be the week that produces a ridiculous winner at a ridiculous price. You had the California circuit, and then they went to the WGC event in Mexico. Some of the guys went to Puerto Rico. But now you get the Florida swing. Now all of a sudden you change grass, and then there's horses for courses. There are a boatload of guys that live within 30 miles of this course. So guys that are familiar with the course can step up and make some noise. Thomas is 5-1, defending champ, playing great. Fowler, Koepka, Garcia, Wood, or Scott, and Woodland. I had Webb Simpson last week, and he played awful in Mexico. 20-1. I think Webb Simpson's going to have a big year, but last week current form was no good. A guy I thought I would be looking for, and sure enough, he's on here, and it's nothing more than a horse for course, and he's not been playing good at all, is Daniel Berger. So he shows up at 30-1. I'm like, well, Berger was, I thought, okay, maybe I could sneak one in here. Well, the odds makers are all over that, and we don't know enough about him the way he's playing right now, but it wouldn't shock you if Berger's in contention. But I would say this to you. I think Matt Wallace getting acclimated in North American soil. This is a guy who won 3 times on the European Tour, 60-1. I'm going to be taking a look at him. I think Taylor Gooch at 100-1 is a guy. C.T. Penn is another kid that every blue moon steps up. He ends up on a lot of leaderboards. On the way in, I'm swinging for the fences, and Sung J.M. at 60-1. I'm going to probably start off with those 4 guys at balloon numbers, Adam, and see where it leads. But I just think the switch from California to Florida could produce some wacko results.
Yeah, and, we don't have a great field here this week, as I mentioned. A lot of guys taking the week off with the cross-country trip. You've got the Arnold Palmer next week. A lot of guys do like to play that event for sentimental reasons to honor Arnie, of course, and because it is a pretty good tournament. Then you've got the Players coming up as well. So guys looking to take a little bit of a blow this week. This is a brutal course, though, too. I think some guys just feel like this course isn't worth the frustration. I mean, the top winning score here, 13 under. We had a couple of 12 unders, but a lot of single-digit winners here. It's a really, really rough track, and that makes it tough because we don't have the world-class players that you would expect to conquer a course like this.
Well, and you know what? And you're right. And actually, which leads me to another guy that I now will have to throw in the pile here. And again, so if you got 5 guys and they're 50-1 or higher, if you hit the thing, your return is going to be in the 10-12-1 range. Last year, only Shinnecock Hills in the U.S. Open played tougher than this course. And you're right. I mean, this par is a good score here. So maybe you look at guys that can contend in majors. That would certainly maybe point you at a guy like Koepka. Par is a good score. Koepka's kind of a U.S. Open specialist. If par is a good score and, middle of greens and just hang around and survive, that's kind of Zach Johnson's game, isn't it? I mean, the bear traps, 15, 16, and 17 can take down the best of them, and you could put up a balloon number, but you're right. You're looking for guys that hit fairways, middle of greens, and the difference ultimately would be who's the guy that's got the flat stick rolling here. But I would look at guys that are consistent and are patient. Where par is a good score, don't panic. Some guy could go out and be 6 or 7 under on the first day. Don't feel like you got to chase that guy immediately, because this is the kind of course where that guy can come back to the pack.
Yeah, and that's something I picked up on here, too. I do like the Zach Johnson idea. I mean, Zach Johnson is a guy from the Southeast. He tends to play well in a lot of these Southeastern U.S. events. I think that's a pretty good one to look at there. Luke List is a guy that I mentioned in my write-up over at BangTheBook.com because, He was runner-up last year, tied for 52nd in 2017, but he finished with a 76. So he was playing pretty well, then went 6 over in his final round, fell down the board, 10th in 2016. But that was something I picked up on in my handicap of this event, Brian, is that a lot of times you do get the horse for course guys that have rattled off 3 or 4 straight top 15s or top 20s. But this course is just such a pain in the ass that you don't have a lot of consistent players here. So this is an event where I do recommend either take the big shots or go ahead.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. That's where Daniel Berger pops up, right? I mean, okay, Daniel Berger, he's been cast for the friendly ghost, but when they get down here, Daniel Berger ends up on the leaderboard. It happens. The other guy, remember Lumpy Heron? No, name doesn't ring a bell there. Big, heavy set guy. He's still out there slapping it around. He's just out there making a living. But when they get to the Honda Classic or they get to the South Florida swing, Lumpy Heron would always end up on the leaderboard. They're guys that just, the course suits their eye. Yeah, this is it's definitely one of the tougher events, one of the more challenging golf handicaps of the year. We should have a lot more to talk about next week with the Arnold Palmer, an event that has an invitational field, so it's kind of a who's who type of event, and of course, sort of the lead into the players there as well. Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. Tell us how people can listen to those shows, Brian. Good stuff, Adam. Thanks. Appreciate it. Noon to 2, KSHP.com, noon to 2 Pacific time. You can follow me on Twitter at Brian Blessing. The shows are archived at sportsbookradio.com. In fact, today we're going to hear from Mark Stone. He's going to be introduced to everybody here in Vegas today. George McPhee talked about the trade deadline on Vegas Hockey Hotline. Bill Foley, the Golden Knights owner, is going to join me in studio for an hour. And he's a breath of fresh air. He gets up there and he says what he thinks, and he doesn't care. He's great. So we'll have a good show today, 1 Pacific, with Bill Foley in studio. And as you mentioned, we're going to get some videos up. We'll certainly be taking care of the golf and NASCAR, and we'll get you an updated Stanley Cup futures report and follow up on post-trade deadline. Because you know what, Adam? People, who do you like? Who do you like to win the cup? And I'm like, well, talk to me February 26th. Well, it's February 26th. I mean, now you know who the players are. You actually know who's going to be on these teams now. And did anybody really themselves as a result of the trade deadline? So we'll get a video for you up at BangTheBook.com. Lots of stuff to look forward to for sure. Again, make sure that you subscribe to our Bang the Book YouTube channel for my videos as well as videos from Brian Blessing. At Brian Blessing on Twitter, Sportsbook Radio, and Vegas Hockey Hotline, the 2 programs. Brian, appreciate the time as always, man. Thank you so much, sir, and we'll talk to you again next week. Glad you're feeling better, pal.